My name's Brianna Day, and I'll be doing Geoffrey Chaucer's A Canterbury Tales, and more specifically, A Knight's Tale. I'll be examining the medieval traditions of courtly love and chivalry. This picture depicts the Poets' Corner in Westminster Abbey, so called because many poets, playwrights, and writers have been buried there over the years. Chaucer was the first in 1400. There are a few different types of memorials to be found in the Poets' Corner. There are stone slabs in the floor that are carved with names and inscriptions, stone monuments, hanging stone tablets, and memorial busts. In recent years, floor and wall space has begun to run out, so they have installed a stained glass memorial window that currently has 6 out of 20 spaces taken. Courtly love was first practiced between nobility in 4 regions: Aquitaine, Provence, Champagne, and Ducal Burgundy from the time of the First Crusade, which was in 1099. Marriage had nothing to do with love at the time, only with power and nobility, so this was a way for nobles to express their love that they couldn't fulfill with their marriage. Many nobility had lovers, but not in the sexual sense, mostly just emotional and mental. As quoted in Andreas Capellanus' Rules of Courtly Love, marriage is no real excuse for not loving, which meant that it is perfectly acceptable to have a lover on the side. There were 5 main, let's call them guidelines, to courtly love. First, it was aristocratic. Courtly love only really existed between nobility. Second, it was ritualistic. There was many expressions of love and rituals to prove their love for each other, for example, tournaments. Third, it was secretive. Because both parties were normally married, it was imperative that the spouse was in the dark and didn't know about the other one. Fourth, it was adulterous, but not necessarily in the sexual sense, more of an emotional and just kind of general dedication to one another. And lastly, it was literary. Everything was very overdone, dramatic, and over-romanticized, similar to poetry and literature of that era. Those 5 guidelines were kind of just a general outline to courtly love, but the real breakdown of it was done by Andreas Capellanus, a 12th century Frenchman, and he wrote down 31 different kind of little rules about courtly love. We'll go through 10 of them that really have to do with the Canterbury Tales, and more specifically the Knight's Tale. Marriage is no real excuse for not loving. We've already talked through that one. He who is not jealous cannot love. When one lover dies, a widowhood of 2 years is required of the survivor. No one should be deprived of love without the very best of reasons. No one can love unless he is impelled by the persuasion of love. The easy attainment of love makes it of little value. Difficulty of attainment makes it prized. Good character alone makes any man worthy of love. Real jealousy always increases the feeling of love. He whom the thought of love vexes eats and sleeps very little. And lastly, nothing forbids one woman being loved by 2 men, or one man by 2 women. Chivalry is a code of conduct associated with knights and the medieval period. It derives from the French word for horseman and involves service to others and learning battle skills. Chivalry today is more associated with characteristics of honor and courtly love more than fighting talents. Knights vowed to be noble, loyal, generous, truthful, and to respect all women. They also vowed to protect the weak and serve their God faithfully. Lastly, they vowed to always finish what they started. This is Geoffrey Chaucer. He was born in 1340 in London, England, and is well known as the father of English literature. His family name derives from French, and it means shoemaker. He was known as an author, philosopher, alchemist, astronomer, bureaucrat, and diplomat. His most famous works were The Book of the Duchess, The House of Fame, The Legend of Good Women, Troilus and Cresside, and The Canterbury Tales. He died in 1400. Some more important facts about Chaucer. In 1359, he served under Prince Lionel in a war in France. In 1360, he was captured by the French and ransomed for 16 pounds. By serving as a soldier, he began to learn the views of courtly love and chivalry, and that inspired a lot of his works. In 1368, he wrote his first book, The Book of the Duchess, and in 1387, he began The Canterbury Tales. Canterbury is a district of Kent in southeast England. In the story, it states that many people go on religious pilgrimages in the springtime, and many people choose to go to Canterbury to visit the remains of Thomas Becket, who was a Christian martyr and had the ability to heal people. This is where we start our story, the Canterbury Tales. We find the narrator, Chaucer, on his way to Canterbury when he stops in an inn and finds 29 others who are all making the same journey. They embark on the journey together, agreeing to have a storytelling contest along the way, with a free dinner on the line as a prize. The knight draws the smallest straw and begins the contest with a 4-part tale about the Duke Theseus, Arcite, Palamon, and Emily. His story starts with the Duke marching home to Athens after winning a great battle with the Amazonians and capturing the beautiful queen, Hippolyta, and her little sister, Emily. He comes along a group of women, all dressed in black, sobbing and grieving. They tell him that they are widows of men who died in the Battle of Thebes, and that Creon will not let them bury their husbands, but has them piled up to rot and be eaten by the dogs. Theseus is both noble and chivalrous, and vows to them that he will avenge their husbands' deaths and make Creon pay for his actions against them. Theseus quickly but honorably kills Creon and conquers Thebes, and orders the whole city to be torn down and for all the deceased husbands to be returned to their grieving wives, therefore fulfilling his quest. After the battle, the bodies of Arcite and Palamon, nephews to Creon, are found injured but alive. They bring them back to Athens in order for them to be imprisoned for the rest of their lives, no matter what ransom is offered, in tribute for Creon's actions against the women on the road. We fast forward to Arcite and Palamon in their prison, and after spending a while there miserably, they both catch sight of the queen's younger sister Emily on separate occasions. In this quote, Arcite is accusing Palamon of loving Emily when Arcite swears he saw her first. He goes on to say that love is the most important thing in the world, more important than their bond as cousins. By the end of the scene, he comes to the conclusion that Palamon can love Emily if he wants, but Arcite will always love her. None of this particularly matters, though, because they are supposed to be imprisoned for life and neither one can have her. This entire scene falls under the guidelines of courtly love because it is a secretive affair. Emily is not even aware of both men's affections for her. Also, it is aristocratic. Emily is the queen's daughter, and Palamon and Arcite are nephews to the deceased king, Creon. Due to an old friend coming to Athens and unexpectedly convincing Theseus to have mercy, Arcite is freed from his prison cell but banished from Athens. This is a sick twist of fate to Arcite, and he feels that he got the short end of the stick because while he gets to live free, Palamon gets to look at his love, Emily, every day. Arcite is angered and saddened by this because he would do anything to be closer to his beloved. Chivalry also peeks its head out in the scene because you see the level of Arcite's dedication to the woman he is madly in love with. He'd rather be in prison than live one free day without seeing her. Arcite returns home to Thebes, but his mind is still in Athens with the fair maiden Emily. He sneaks back into Athens and becomes the Duke's most trusted advisor over 7 years to get closer to his daughter. Meanwhile, Palamon escapes prison and runs home to Thebes to gather an army to claim the beautiful Emily or die trying. Arcite is out for a walk one day and starts to talk out loud to himself about how unfair it is that he cannot just be with Emily, and how he would do anything for her. Little does he know Palamon is hiding in the bushes. He jumps out and confronts Arcite, and they end up agreeing to a duel for the right to Emily's heart. This portrays the idea of courtly love through the level of dedication both men show to a woman that has no idea of their love. This longing has been going on for over 7 years, and both men will still fight to the death for this woman. Theseus stumbles upon the 2 men fighting and realizes that they are the men he despised the most and had put in prison many years ago. His first thought is to punish them, but once the queen and Emily begin crying and begging Theseus to have mercy, he has a change of heart. They are all taken aback by how hard and long 2 handsome men are willing to fight for Emily's heart. Theseus realizes that every man has a right to love and do anything he can for it. A very chivalrous notion. Theseus decides to put on a tournament, with each man bringing his best 100 knights to fight for Emily's hand. However, he outlaws any deadly weapons and makes the rule that as soon as a knight is injured, he is out of the competition, to avoid any casualties, and that as soon as Arcite or Palamon are injured, the competition is over. Both men wake up very early the day of the competition and go pray to the god or goddess they think will help them the most. Palamon chooses to appeal to Venus, goddess of love, because he feels that love is the most powerful thing of all, and that with her on his side he will surely win. He also tells her that if he can't have Emily, then to kill him, because he cannot live without her for one more day. This level of pure want and need is symbolic to courtly love. Arcite, on the other hand, goes and prays to Mars, the god of war. He tries to appeal to him by comparing his suffering with the suffering Mars felt when he lusted after Venus. He promises to cut off all of his hair, which has never been cut before, and be a devoted servant to Mars for the rest of his life as long as he can have Emily. Keep in mind, neither of these men have even spoken to Emily at this point, but they still have this passion that burns so deeply within them that they will do whatever it takes to have her. In this sense, their love is adulterous, another aspect of courtly love, because it is based on physical appearances alone. Also, the two men praying to the gods display chivalry because knights were always taught to have a strong sense of faith and always trying to appease their god. The battle gets underway and everyone fights valiantly, and soon the field begins to narrow. Palamon takes a big injury and Theseus tells everyone to stop and the battle is over. Palamon knows if he leaves the arena he will lose his love. The referees run out to drag him off, but he will not let them because the idea of giving up Emily is too hard to bear. It eventually takes 20 men to drag him off. This shows the literary guideline to courtly love. How extreme is it that 20 men had to drag him off because his love is so powerful? Arcite is all set to marry Emily, but in a strange twist of fate, and maybe some intervention from Venus, he is gravely injured while riding around on his horse. He gets sicker and sicker, and eventually they realize that he will die. In his dying speech, Arcite confesses his love for her and laments that for a brief moment he had everything he had ever wanted. After Arcite's death, Emily and Palamon, even though they had Arcite's blessing, cannot fathom being together because under the guidelines of courtly love, a widow is supposed to grieve for at least 2 years. Theseus sees how miserable they are and tells them that God made love to bind the heavens and earth together, but he also made death and suffering. His point is that everything happens for a reason and that Arcite died so that they could be together. In the end, they agree, and Arcite marries Emily and Palamon. They live so happily for the rest of their lives and love each other so deeply that they never have an ill word against each other. And that is the story of how Palamon served his god and his country and won the love of his life to go down as one of the most romantic and chivalrous stories in history.